Congressman Garrett, good to have you with us, sir.
John, good to be on. I actually met with the ambassador and some staff from Qatari yesterday, and I'm having a briefing this morning that we arranged after that meeting. I will tell you that I think it's irresponsible journalism at best to dismiss this out of hand. I think there's very clear evidence of Qatari working with Hamas. On what level, I'm going to try to determine to a greater degree today. There's a lot of there, and we're just trying to determine how much we can with the information that we have access to, which is a great deal, of what the truth is. Having said all of that, the Qataris would swear up and down that they were hacked, and I've heard that one before, right. And that some third nefarious party is out to make them look badly to their neighbors in the world. So I can't say definitively, but I would say that if you follow the analogy that it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. That
most likely.
At some level, there had to have been some coordination.
Well, look, we just had Eddie Iranian on from the Voice of America. He's live in Cairo. He's our guy. He's been following the story for months, and he was just on for 30 minutes. He's there, and he told us that his people in Cairo has told him that one of the key objectives in Trump's visit of our Middle Eastern allies was to get this intel directly to President Trump when he was there so that he could see it firsthand and be aware of the fact that they've been suspect of the Qatari government for some time. So I think you're spot on there, Congressman. All media in a tizzy. I've never seen a crazy feeding frenzy like this in my life over James Comey, the James Comey circus clown show come to town tomorrow, Senate Intel. Now ABC has leaked that he really doesn't have anything to say. I guess he didn't like the president's tone or something. I don't know what he's going to say, but it now appears that the left-wing media is, what should I say, diminishing the level of expectations, is that there's going to be some kind of impeachment-level bombshell. What does this all mean?
If James Comey were to come forth and suggest that Trump obstructed justice, that James Comey would then implicate himself by having not reported it in a timely manner.
Right.
Right. So the potential for anything titillating to come about is pretty slim, because the only way that could happen is for Comey to say, and as director of the FBI, I looked the other way when this alleged crime occurred. So, I find it very interesting that Comey allegedly kept memoirs that no one ever knew about. As a prosecutor, I'd have a tough time putting those into evidence because I can't show contemporaneous drafting to the events, and so you could write anything you wanted. So the weight of that evidence in a normal world would be infinitesimally small, but this isn't a normal world, and there are a lot of people who are clamoring to get something and then ascribe to it, I think, a value that it doesn't have or wouldn't in any other reasonable standard.
These are handwritten notes. They weren't sent to anybody. They're not dated. Even if they were, you can date a handwritten note at any time you want. You can backdate it. What I said.
There's no corroborating witness. So essentially, it's a really semi-intelligent legal attempt to bolster your own testimony.
Right.
But you don't have any corroboration. You could write them at any time.
Sure. And it's basically interpretation, because what ABC has said he's going to say is that, he felt he didn't like the president's tone. What the hell does that mean? I don't like his tone?
I don't know, but if not liking somebody's tone were a crime in Washington, we'd be half my colleagues would be gone.
You got that right. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. But look, the left-wing media, the mainstream legacy media is just, they're salivating over this. They can't wait. It's like Christmas for them with all the lights on. And I think they're going to be sorely disappointed. The other thing, wasn't he asked this in a former hearing under oath if there was any obstruction, and didn't he say no?
That's correct.
And that was after the meeting.
Now he's double implicated himself.
And that was after the alleged dinner with the president. Because the dinner, the dinner was in early February.
You have a duty to be truthful in your testimony, number one. And number two, when you are the director of the FBI, if you witness a crime, you're supposed to report it. So I just don't. Unless Comey wants to throw himself under the bus with Trump, that's number one. Number two, I don't think anything happened.
Right.
But, even if it had, Comey's lied himself into incredibleness as it relates to his testimony. So, incredulity.
The other thing that bothers me about this is the way this all come out. I mean, if this were to be true, okay, let's just give Comey the benefit of the doubt. He did the memo immediately after the meeting. Some people say he has a history of that. So if he did the memo and he felt this way and he didn't report it, okay, well, that's a violation, right? He should have reported it. But if he did report it and kept it and he felt pressured, the only reason he would have kept it was to potentially then blackmail the president at a future date. There's no other explanation. None. It's either you're going to come forward with it or you're going to hold it in your pocket for blackmail and say, you can't do anything to me because I have this note. So I think tomorrow's going to be very disappointing for many who think that somehow this is going to put the president down some crazy rabbit hole. We'll see how it plays out. Here's another thing that's bothering Congressman a lot of our callers these past 2 days is this 25-year-old young lady, and she seems like a very nice young lady. I mean, I have a daughter that's 27. I'm sensitive to that. Oh, this very nice young lady, 25, a contractor, looks like she doesn't look very old to me in the pictures, brazenly gets access to classified information and then this brazenly copies it and sends it to a media outlet in clear violation of federal law. I'm concerned about, and my callers are concerned about, two things I want to get you to comment on. One, how does a person like this get access to this information? And is that a real issue we got to deal with? And secondly, is there a cultural thing going on that tells a person 25 years old that they can do this kind of thing and not have severe consequences behind it? And is there no patriotism or protect America, loose lips, sink ships, all that stuff that I certainly grew up with? What is this?
Yeah, I've actually spoken with the contractor who is responsible for doing background on security clearances, who told me that it was frightening to him, some of the people who were receiving security clearances, but that was not with any specificity as it relates to this case. I understand that you can't teach the 10 Commandments in school, but I don't see anything wrong with teaching thou shalt not lie. There are certain things that are secular as it relates to values that I think we've gotten away from as a culture as we move towards moral relativism. And so we're reaping the consequences of that. I'll tell you that if I were the prosecutor in the case of this young woman, I won't call her a lady. I don't have any evidence to that end, that there would be a relentless push towards a maximum sentence. I also would call for the prosecutor to charge this case as if it's a meaningful case. What I mean by that is each document is a separate count, and so for her to be facing one count when having transferred multiple documents is an undercharging. You can say what you want, but a message needs to be sent that information that's pertinent to our national security doesn't get leaked. There's a Navy enlisted sailor who is languishing at Fort Leavenworth right now, I believe, for sending pictures of the inside of a submarine to his family, not the press. And I'm not justifying what that young man did. However, I think it's an order of magnitude smaller to say, hey, this is where I work, than to say, hey, press, here's highly classified information, use it to damage our nation, which is exactly what this young woman did. So I have to measure my tone as it relates to Miss Winter. I do think that the prior administration, when they pardoned Bradley Chelsea Manning, sent a very clear signal that we didn't take as seriously as perhaps we once did state secrets and the leaking thereof. But I also believe there's a new sheriff in town.
Do you favor prosecuting Miss Winter to the extent of the law, Congressman Garrett?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm telling you, if I were the prosecutor, I'd be trying to figure out exactly how many counts I had, and she wouldn't be facing 10 years. She'd be facing 10 years times the number of counts that I could charge. And then when I argued sentencing, my argument would be that leaking classified information imperils the lives of 320-plus million Americans, and that there's no sentence severe or too severe for those who would wantonly put at risk the security of our nation.
So you're 25 years old. You have this job. You came out, you served in the Air Force out of high school. I believe she served 6 years in the Air Force out of high school. Then you get this pretty good job. You're a veteran, and I appreciate that. Is there no thought that says, you know, if I send this, I could go to jail for 20, 30 years and destroy my life? I mean, is there, is it just, is the culture just that brazen?
At some point in
Cavalier?
life, and it comes sooner for some people than others, you realize that there are consequences to any of the actions that you decide to take. And, you know, above and beyond the potential for a prison sentence should be what's in the best interest of this nation that I was willing to serve. You know, the leaking of classified information flies in the face of the commitment that young men and women who agree to serve in uniform make. And it says what I want to do and my values are more important than the potential safety and well-being of others in this country and abroad. And, you know, it's narcissistic. I would argue potentially sociopathic behavior if we can contemplate the potential ramifications with some level of maturity. And I have to believe, based on Miss Winter's ability, as I think I read, to speak Dari and Pashto and I think Urdu, that she's probably pretty smart. So time to be held accountable for the decisions you made.
Unbelievable. The cavalier attitude and the way it was done. I mean, she didn't even try to hide it. She just copied it and put it in the mail. And then the internet company just sending it to get verification of it with her name on it. I mean, well, not her name on it, but it was obviously, it could be traced. Just the whole thing, the way it was handled, it's like nobody cares. And there's
reading of the story is that she confessed to the FBI. And,
yeah.
I mean, you talk about a pretty easy case.
Yeah, confessed.
But, yeah, apparently not a big deal in her world.
Well, it's going to be a big deal because she's going to spend a very long time behind bars. She ended a good portion of her life for, I don't know, maybe she thinks it's justifiable. I don't know.
Maybe she will. I mean, the entire left is going to rally to her defense. I read somewhere the ACLU said that, you know, leaking classified information was a vital function of individuals in a free society. Well, I'm pretty close to libertarian. There's stuff that for our own safety's sake, we can't leak to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. You know, maybe she wanted 15 minutes of fame. She's got it. I guarantee you, though, that there'll be plenty of sympathetic voices saying that she did something good by virtue of their vitriol for the president and without regard for the potential ramifications for our nation.
Well, look, that's
how upside down the world is.
We've had the same thing with Eric Snowden, but I think, you know, Carly Fiorina said this yesterday on my show, and you're saying the same thing. I agree with you. You know, you can almost, it dates back here to this Manning pardon, because I think, and I'm not going to go into the president's mind, President Obama, why he did this, former President Obama, but he certainly set a tone and a precedent and maybe a level of expectation that it's okay what Manning did. And, you know, somehow you're going to wiggle your way out of it and be some kind of a martyred hero like to some people Manning is. I don't know, but it's not a good thing. Congressman, the president yesterday coming out with an infrastructure plan that contemplated taking the air traffic control system out of the FAA so that he said we can take it out of the government, out of the procurement system, out of the bureaucracy, and be in a position to accelerate our level of technology there. And he also said that there's only 2 countries that still have their air traffic control system tied to the bureaucracy of a government, and that's the U.S. and France. And, of course, nobody wants to be behind France in anything. Do you have an opinion on this as of yet?
Well, yeah, the first thing you do is look at best practices, and globally the entire world's been moving in that direction. Before people throw their hands up and lament about the risk of safety, you know, essentially privatizing air traffic control does not remove federal oversight, right? So we would still have standards and regulations that would be enforced upon the entities executing that important role. If you can do that at a fraction of the cost I don't see why you wouldn't, right? Ultimately, right now, every single American pays what I would argue is too much money for an antiquated system that relies on legacy platforms that are decades and decades old. If you can modernize and get a better product, then and privatize, then only the people who choose to fly will pay that cost. And I certainly think, as somebody who tries to avoid air travel unsuccessfully, unfortunately, all too often, that makes sense to me.
The Trump tax cut reform plan, it's nowhere to be found in Congress. Where are we?
Which is a tragedy, because the plan that he put forward really is the Republican Study Committee plan with some tweaks. It's a tax plan. Are you talking about the tax plan or the budget plan? I'm sorry.
The tax plan.
Yeah, well, you're kind of right. It's kind of, and candidly, there's something good about this. It's more being debated compartmentalized, and that is, let's look at corporate, let's look at individual, let's look at deductions separately. I've always been an advocate for not having omnibus legislation. I understand why, for efficiency's sake, the administration or leadership might want to roll out a big package, but I'd rather break it down into subcomponents. And that, at least, is being discussed in the hallways and amongst the sub-entities of the House.
All right, we're out of time. I want to thank Congressman Tom Garrett for being with us, Republicans' 5th District of Virginia. That's a very big district, Tom. It goes from, like, it's bigger than what? Maryland, Delaware?
It's New Jersey plus Vermont.
New Jersey plus Vermont. It is a huge district that you've got to cover. We appreciate you being on. Now, here's how you get more information. You can go to Tom Garrett, 2 R's, 2 T's, tomgarrett.house.gov. But what you really want to do is follow Tom on Twitter, which is at Garrett4VA, at Garrett4VA. Tom Garrett, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
It's like a killing field, my Twitter account, with crazies from the left. So you can do that. You will be entertained.
I love your Twitter because it is funny, at Garrett4VA.com, because you guys do answer back your detractors, which I appreciate. Tom Garrett, member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and we appreciate, sir, your time and being with us and your unique candor that we always get. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, John.
All right. TomGarrett.house.gov.